And so the altar is built, and the tapestry of names and faces is knit, even though it goes on for a long, long time. And by those two things, the altar and the tapestry, this space is made sacred. Amen. What is the grass? It's a wonderful line to start Whitman's famous reflection on mortality. Words that are put into the mouth of a child. And I would think that that's wise, because the line is deceptively innocent. It masks a much deeper concept than what the simple question offers at first glance. The child hands to the older Whitman a handful of deep green strands, fibrous blades with the pungent smell of a lawn's green blood. "What is the grass?" he asks. "What are these thin stalks that I have plucked up on this hot summer day?" An innocent question that has no real clear answer. Instead, Whitman turns the question over and over again in his mind. Is it a symbol of God's generous, vibrant creation? Are these broken stalks of grass themselves like a child, the new life of vegetation sprung forth? Or is the secret of grass that it sprouts among all people, without reservation and prejudice, ushering in a sign of peace? After going through all of this turning and wondering, he reaches a turning point in the poem. It's Whitman's line, "Now this grass seems itself like the beautiful uncut hair of graves." Instead of being a divine symbol or new life, it signals the presence of those who have come before, those who have died. And the poem from that point forward becomes a reflection on death, on mortality, and the presence that abides after passing. Now, there is a Buddhist parable that has always stuck with me and that I think has a similar meaning. Two waves are forming in the ocean. They are discrete, large, beautiful, powerful. Gaining speed, they look off into the distance, and each of them sees another wave crash upon the shore. And those waves that crash upon the shore are completely obliterated. The one wave turns to the other wave and says, "We have to stop. We have to go back. We cannot go forward." "Why?" asks the second wave. "Because we will surely crash into the shore and we will disappear." "Why are you not concerned?" asks the first wave. The second wave takes a moment to respond and then says, "Oh, don't you see it? I'm not a wave. I'm a part of the ocean." Whitman's poem looks in the opposite direction but comes to the same conclusion. His poem, if it were put into that metaphor of waves, it's almost as if he's looking back from the shore after so many waves have struck and disappeared, and it wonders about all of the secret lost histories there. In that sense, he contemplates the blades of grass and wonders about their stories, suggesting that they were once a part of the lives and the bodies of people. The people who died surely nourished those blades and made them into the refulgent green stalks that give Whitman pause on that summer day. And we human beings are not always good at embracing that larger cycle that creates and sustains our lives. I remember a scene from a movie when I was young, and it's always stuck with me. It was from a comedy drama from the early 90s, and it was called My Girl, starring Anna Chlumsky and Macaulay Culkin. Does anybody remember this film? I'm seeing a few people nodding. Okay, not the only one who saw that. They are two friends who spend their many days exploring the woods, playing games, and having a wonderful time with each other. You see them jump into the cool stream of running water on a sweltering hot day, taste the red juice of berries in the woods, and listen for the owls to sing to them at night. Now, later in the film, one of the young friends goes off into the woods on his own and is stung by a swarm of wasps. He is allergic to them, and he dies. In the scene that I remember most from that film, I remember his friend walking into the funeral home. She's so young that she barely understands what it is that's happening in that instance. So she walks up to the open coffin and begins to look in. Her pained words come out softly at first and then louder. "His glasses," she says. "Where are his glasses?" Her parents try to take her away and console her, but she refuses to leave the coffin. She runs back up and she starts to scream, "His glasses! He can't see without his glasses. Where are his glasses?" She simply cannot comprehend that he is now beyond needing them. It's a heartbreaking scene, and it is not unfamiliar, I think. When we are confronted with death when our hearts break, the idea that death is a part of life sounds both empty and cruel. Instead, it sounds like it is a final ending, a definite period. Even Whitman, in his beautiful poem, acknowledges the grief. He says that maybe the grass that he's holding in his hands transpired from the breasts of young men. Maybe if he had met them, he would have loved them. But mortality prevents us from ever knowing. This is the place for sadness and for grief. Now, the holy days at this time of year do not ignore the grief that comes with death. El Dia de los Muertos, Samhain, All Souls, Fête Gede, each from different cultures welcomes the sadness that wells up in the face of death. On El Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, families take pictures to the graveyards, as Jonathan showed in the story today. They set out food for the dead, and their absence is felt acutely. Heartfelt and somber prayers are said into the night. "I miss you" are on the lips of many. But that is not an end to that holiday. There is also celebration. There is reverence. There is gratitude. And I think that last one is key. When the pain and the loss ease, they leave a space in us that is open for thanks. A space for the overwhelming gratitude we have that person once touched our lives and continues to influence us in innumerable ways. Like the grass. Whitman's poem shows the almost animistic quality that the dead can possess. We may begin to hear their voices in the rustling leaves or their voices in the fire's breath. We're reminded of those who have died in a handful of grass, in that beautiful uncut hair of graves. We hear it in the ticking clock and in the silent room. We are reminded when we hear a favorite song of theirs, or taste their favorite food, or hear the cell phone, the ringtone that came from only their cell phone, or when we look at the pictures that we have placed up here on the altar of the dead. That's when they come alive for us again. Gratitude has been called grief's twin. It is yet another accompanying inner reality to loss. I would suggest that it is the way that the dead are able to come most alive to us. When we can look back at their lives and give thanks that we knew them and that they offered us lessons and that they loved us, we bring them back into our lives. In those moments, death itself dies, and our beloved dead join us in this risky, uncertain experience that we call life. We are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, writes the Apostle Paul. Gratitude allows us to be open to their voices. Grief does have its place. It is the dark country where each of us dwells at some point. The intensity of the pain is itself an affirmation. It demonstrates the importance of the ones that we loved and lost. Aristotle said that if we felt nothing at such a loss of someone who was so profoundly a part of our lives, that wouldn't be strength, which sometimes that is confused with strength. But he says that wouldn't be strength, but rather a symptom that something is terribly wrong with you. We must feel pain and the grief if we are to say yes to the experience of having had that person in our lives. We must become citizens of that dark country of grief if we are to honor the dead. The pain lays the foundations for the blessings that come later. And here is the wisdom of the holy days of memory. They don't ask us to hide the pain. They only ask us to acknowledge the beauty, too. They celebrate the lives of the ones who have died. And when we say yes to that, invitation, we continue their legacy on in our lives. The dead speak to us whenever we remember them, whenever we recall the many gifts that they gave us, and the holidays of the dead celebrate and honor this truth. I think it is in that context that we might understand Whitman's final words in the poem, the ones that say, "Nothing collapses, and to die is different from what anyone supposed, and perhaps luckier. It's luckier because those who have died have never ever left. Their presence may have changed. They may not physically be with us, but their living memory is present. Our beloved guide us and change us, hold us and comfort us, and that might, just one day it might, become enough simply to remember and recollect and to run our hands through the grass."